Today on The Special Sauce, we are joined by Simon Yeung, Managing Director for Talent International here in Australia. Simon has worked the Australian market for over 25 years and leads one of the most successful tech agencies in Australia. Today, we're going to cover a couple of things. What good looks like in recruitment in 2026, what he thinks the future looks like for recruitment in Australia, and also what does talent do to be able to produce so many big billers and have low staff turnover year after year. Simon, welcome to The Special Sauce.
Thanks, Lee. Thanks, Chris.
Good to have
Appreciate
you
the
on.
intro.
Nah, all good, mate. Pleasure is ours. How's the recruitment market treating you so far for 2026?
Different markets are different. If I look at the Australian market, it's a steady market, but definitely not buoyant. All right, we've got positivity out of Queensland market and WA somewhat in the smaller markets as well, South Australia. But you look at Sydney, that's a bit slow for us, I must say.
Yep.
We're big in state and federal government, so we're seeing good activity there. So that's kept our numbers up, so to speak. We've got a New Zealand business. We're seeing a strong recovery started this year, which has been good. They've really been hampered the last couple of years in economic downturn and government policies that's really decreased the amount of opportunities we've had from a recruitment point of view.
Yeah, got ya. Yeah, it's interesting. I think we've definitely seen, talking about some of the international markets, we've definitely seen the Kiwis probably get it a bit worse than we have here in Australia. And we've definitely seen a lot looking to cross the ditch to come over here to continue their recruitment career. So I think good to see that market's recovering a bit. Yeah. I think also interestingly, definitely speaking to a lot of our clients, we're seeing real differences state by state. I don't know if you're seeing it, but a lot of our clients say that perhaps Victoria is one of the ones that's lagging at the moment. I mean, being in Melbourne ourselves, do you find that? What are you seeing?
I do find that, but being in Melbourne myself for the last 30 plus years, I try to ignore that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you kind of support the state that you're in. But, you've got to be honest with yourself. We've had some bad decisions from government maybe that's hindered some of the developments here in Victoria. A lot of businesses moving to other states as well. So we've had it pretty tough, I must say. But I think good businesses out there with the right people and maybe a longer term perspective, you see it differently. I think it will come back, but it'll probably take another couple of years before it will. Even this year, we're predicting pretty similar to what was last year, which was quite a flat top market. So it's not easy.
Yeah.
Is there any pockets, I guess, say specific to Melbourne or Victoria where whether it's gov or whether it's, commerce, industry, where there's, I guess, call it light at the end of the tunnel or some positive growth?
Government definitely, but there is already a slowdown on that. There's only so much money they can pump into the industry, so to speak. So we're seeing a slowdown in the state government. Federal's slightly, there's still some buoyancy there. So I think as a business, you got to spread your client in Victoria to be successful. I think if you're really just focused on one vertical, one industry, it might be a huge gamble or huge risk, so to speak. So fortunately for us over the years, and you can call it strategy or just hungry to deal with everyone out there, we've kind of spread our business quite far and wide from retail to finance to government. I think one area we're seeing a lot more activity is the utility space, and that's both on regulation changes, green energy and the renewable side of things. So we're seeing more investments in that area, particularly in utility. Yeah.
Yeah, got you.
Yeah.
Got you. Mate, you touched on it before. You've been in Melbourne for a long time, and you've been involved in the recruitment space. In your time, like, what have been the major changes that you've seen across our industry, for better or for worse? Like, what's different in recruitment 2026 versus perhaps when you first started?
I think there's some stuff that still rings true. I think relationships in building that, both in terms of your candidate, your contractors, your client, it's still true regardless of 2026 now right through to 2006. I think what's changed over the years, if I see it, is it's probably more procured. If I look at your larger customers, a lot of the recruitment activity and the terms and conditions are run by procurement. Whereas when I was hands-on recruiter, say 20 years ago, it's, hey, you can deal with anyone as long as you've got that relationship. And maybe it switches more to, I guess, generation-wise, it used to be more of a selling component to the recruitment piece. Not that it's not there now, but it's a different type of selling. I think back then was more, how can I put it, maybe a hardcore type salesman in terms of knocking down doors and, connecting with people. As long as you got that relationship, generally I can deal with you, Lee or Chris or anyone out there. But I think over the years now you see procurement taking a bigger play in terms of who's your suppliers, what are your terms. We're probably seeing as an industry our terms are going the other way instead of increasing in terms of our fees across the board, which is an issue, especially cost of running a business hasn't decreased on that aspect, yet our pricing year on year seems to go lower and lower. It gets to a point now, to be honest, on that. We say to some customers that we know for years and just honest conversations with them, we can't go any lower. Like anything else, we just can't be sustainable, so to speak. So I think now the recruiter of 2026, I think to be successful and great at your job, you need to build that community around whatever your specialization is. You know, maybe it's an industry vertical you're really good at, maybe it's a technology vertical, or maybe you're just bloody good with the clients and you nurture your clients really well. So I think it takes a lot more skill currently to build that, a lot more real recruitment expertise around recruitment itself, not just the selling aspect, but where do you find great candidates? Where do you find the niche type candidates? Where do you build community? And credibility around, it's not just putting a bum on the seat, but clients are probably looking for recruiters to be their partner and advisor around the whole talent acquisition piece. I've seen there has been a shift.
I guess just on that, you touched on obviously the building community piece, right? And I think that's something that, a lot of, recruiters maybe in their first sort of 3 to 4 years probably struggle with, right? And it is hard. What advice would you have, or I guess from people that you've seen, at Talent do it, or just in your experience, who are at that sort of stage of their career and saying, hey, you know what, you've sort of done your apprenticeship now in recruitment, it's time to take that next step. How do you go about actually building whatever community you want to build?
I think I get to your point, Chris. It's when you've gone past the bit where I'm trialing recruitment, now you're seriously taking recruitment as a career. That's when you got to start thinking, okay, how do I make myself known in the community, wherever that is, if it's in tech, if it's an industry or a client space, and making a strategic game to go, okay, this is where I'm going to play the next 3 years, and what can I do to really add value to that community out there? I think you need the support of the employer, so to speak, if you're working for an agency, to support the process around both the structure of it, the financials of it, and how you make that happen. I think the other thing we've found with people is you've got to be consistently doing it. I've seen a lot of recruiters and even ourselves do a meetup here, there, and then it all fades away. I don't think that has any real value for anyone, including yourself. I think, as I say to my team, if you've got to do it consistently. Be really stubborn about it. First few times, you might feel like you get nothing out of this. And you're like, oh God, 10 people turn up. What a flop. It's been embarrassing, right? And we've had that. And you just got to encourage yourself to go, you know what? Yes, you got to start somewhere. No one starts from, 1 or 2 meetups or a community and build a big brand name. It needs that consistency out there. And also, you got to pick something that has a bit of longevity. I think sometimes we go for the real short, what's in vogue in the market right now, but does that translate to a real outcome in terms of your desk and building that clientele or the candidates out there? So I think really consistency, really picking out the market you want to be in and really providing value to that. I think don't look at the financials and say, hey, I'm going to do this because I'm going to build $1 million or $2 million. That will come, but it's more about, okay, how am I going to really be embedded in this community and be genuine, authentic about it, that you want to add value to that space?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I agree with you 100%. I think it can be disheartening, right? And I know Lee and I've, since we started Society about 4 years ago, just going how we've built up our brand and our personal brand, and you see just even small things like posting, trying to build a community, you're getting 2 likes and you're like, fuck, is that it? But that consistency, right? It compounds over 1, 2, 3 years, and it just works. It's as simple as that.
It reminds me of a story, actually, when we first started the business and hosting client events. And to be honest, we had stuff all clients, all right? So we used to call our staff, hey, bring your brother, your sister, your neighbour. We'll just free drinks, just fill the room up, And funny enough, 10 years later, those guys still come along as a joke. Now they've got clients. And I still remember those days where it's like 3 clients and about 20 mates there.
You got to fake it till you make it, right?
Somewhat, just to create the vibe. I mean, we would tell the truth, but at least there's more than 3 people in the whole place, right? To make it just a bit more happening. So.
Yeah, I think what we've seen doing this podcast series is it's a really common theme with some of these really high performers is that building community, right? Whether it's actual events or adding value to their client base through different things. I think, I definitely agree with you. For a young recruiter, you got to try and build those networks. But you made a really good point. I think there's some agencies out there that probably perhaps aren't as supportive on doing that. And I don't think there's any ill will. It's just more so it's perhaps not what they've done from a methodology perspective before, right? And I think that's probably one thing with the recruitment industry. We can be set in our ways sometimes, but I think, what we're seeing anyway, like this is the way of the future for sure.
It's difficult. We've got quite a large team in the Melbourne branch where I run here. We've got 50 odd people in there. I'd say out of that, probably only 15% are doing that community building. So it is difficult because it is time out of your day to day. You might not see the immediate return. I think you also need the right attribute of the person to be actually wanting to do this. You can't force it. So if someone doesn't like to host events or be engaging in that space, I find it fails. I think naturally when you run a team, a few people put their hand up. Obviously, you've got to provide the opportunity, the structure and the expenditure to do so in the support. We've been doing probably the last 6 or 7 years, and the people that have naturally done this, they're just natural connectors. They just want to do this because they get a thrill out of hosting events and connecting with people.
Yeah. And I think that's why I know for me, like networking events personally, I struggle. And so that's where like I've always got that fear, like what you said before of hosting an event and like no one turns up. Like that's a big one. I suppose I just got to get over that, don't I?
Could do it, Lee.
Just get the boys in. I'm worried about my mates, so they'll probably try and it'll cost me a fortune with the bar tab.
Well, that's what I said. You got to have the support expenditure to do it consistently too, and it's not cheap these days hosting events. And it's just we're doing quite a regular series the last 2 years, and you just see our expenditure just keep going up and up. But I think it's great investment for the staff in their personal development as well. And a byproduct of that, it's actually hard to measure. You host an event, might get 50, 80 people there. What are the immediate returns? Because from our industry, they might not be hiring for another 6 or 9 months. So they remember that one event they attended to and goes, oh, I love what Chris and Lee said. I'll give them a call.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I think that's, you're right. The immediate return's not there, right? We work in an environment where it's, monthly or quarterly, depending on your business, and you need to hit a certain number or a certain number of placements. And hosting an event that's going to take so many hours, you don't see that, 3 extra placements that you get this quarter, right? I think that's the biggest challenge, and probably more mindset thing than anything else. The short term be long term, right? From there. So, but one thing I wanted to just discuss was just around high performance, because I know when we were prepping for this, right? Just some of the numbers that your business is delivering at the moment, and we actually read an article through Ross.
Yeah, it was Ross Clement blog back in July last year.
Yeah.
So in that blog, I think he'd spoken to a senior leader at Talent, and I think they referred to the fact that there was about 40 billers, perhaps globally, that were billing, upwards of $1 million a year, which is huge. I think a lot of agencies. I mean, look, there's $1 million billers out there, but would agencies have that many? Probably not. And so, I guess from our perspective, we're really keen to understand what goes on under the bonnet at Talent, so to speak, to be able to produce those kind of numbers. So, firstly, is it true? Is it true? And if so, tell us more. Like, how do you guys do this?
It's incredible, and it is true. And don't make those numbers up. But again, I think you go back to the right structure to support the people. So if I look at why we've got so many, and there's probably numerous reasons, I would say. And I think our business, we take a longer term approach on our people as well. Out of these $40 million billers, none of them would have done it within their first 3 years. So it takes time to craft that clientele, so to speak, to be able to build that. Also the structure around how we support our top billers. I think we do create a team for these. So I wouldn't say, even in our conferences, we rarely recognise the one individual. So we've got billers that do 1, 2, 3, and I mentioned you guys, someone doing $4 million, which is just incredible. But that person has 3 or 4 people supporting him from a delivery aspect to do that. So I think our structure and how we set out our company, if I look back years ago, very simply, we want to be one of the largest predominant suppliers of technology talent across Australia and the most engaged staff. This is like 10 plus years ago. We looked at how do we structure it. So we need a simple commission structure. Firstly, that it's not always about money, I must say, but I think when it's clear cut that people know that the more they do, the more they receive without too many complexities around, all right, if you do this, you get taken off, or if you do this, this goes to someone else, and all those kind of stuff that I think confuses the matter. We keep it quite simple where it's a straight runway where the guys can go, guys and girls can go, hey, if I know I can do this, I know I can achieve this for myself. So really clear structure around it. We like building teams rather than the individual running a desk and that person to be it, the whole process in terms of the whole desk itself. Most of our guys and girls there are either sharing a desk or actually sharing in terms of what we call the budgets or commission or how they achieve. So it might be one or two people have similar skill sets. And in fact, most of the times it's contradicting because we have different people with different skills. Some might be really client-facing. Some might be great account managers. And we combine those teams to really make a business out of a business so they can work within the talent umbrella but kind of run their business the way they see fit. And by product of that, they build a really substantial business. I think the other thing that we've got such high performance, we're not strict in terms of consultants only running a contract desk or only a perm desk. All our people are dual desks. We have specialisation where our sourcing team will specialise in different technology verticals to deliver the candidates, but our account managers, we kind of free flow a bit to go, hey, if you have a client that want to work with you, go for it. What we expect is that you deliver a top level service. And in terms of large clients, our mandate is always you want to be the top supplier there, because that way you can control or support the client in a way that we're doing great delivery, great service. And then when there's changes with the client, put it selfishly, we're probably the last ones to be pushed off the panel or not be a supplier. So not hardcore KPI measurements, but we set the bar quite high for our consultants. We've got to deal with it. We want the best people out there. Plus we'll provide the best support in order to achieve those types of numbers. So I really think it's that flexibility, people owning their own destiny somewhat, and the fact that they're not limited to verticals or just contract or perm to be able to do that. And as you guys know, if it's just a perm desk, you're really relying on the environment sometimes, right? I mean, out of COVID, obviously there was fantastic. We would see some tremendous, billers out there, and once the perm market drops, then you're back to square one. So I think with us, with a large contracting base, what it provides is stability. As long as you keep growing your contracting patch month on month, your income keeps increasing with a permanent add on top, with the fees on that gets you well on your way to, high hundreds. And once we get to that space, we look at people and go, how do we create a team around you to support you to 1 million, 2 million, and 3 million, and so forth?
And with those teams, when you talk about creating teams, do you do that based on, say, a discipline within tech or industry sector, or based on certain accounts?
Bit of everything, I must say. So we experiment with various different things. So if I look at Melbourne, it's very relationship driven. So we started a bit on the vertical, and then we thought, you know what? Let's work with what the customer wants. They want to be working with the same consultants they can trust, right? So if they've been dealing with you, Lee, and they move to another organisation, it's like, well, even if I introduce myself, so for example, it's not the same person dealing with it. So structurally, we kind of support the clients in terms of what works for them. So Melbourne, not really. It's very client driven. So I've got guys in my team that could be dealing with utilities right through to financial services. I think recruitment's still the same, particularly we're in tech, right? We're not really looking at the industry specialization. It's the technical specialization. So I think the industry doesn't really bother us. And I go back to what our goal was. How do we, really excel our staff to be the top performers, and working it backwards that way? And we think that's still probably the best way to go about it. In our Sydney market, we're probably more on the vertical base there because it's a slightly different market. But having said that, they've morphed into more of a client-driven vertical rather than I just do a particular technology. And that's across all other states.
Yeah, got ya.
And you just touched on something before, just around, sort of having more outcome-focused KPIs. And I know when we were prepping for this, you talked about, you don't really measure your team on the old school recruitment sort of KPIs. Can you talk us through that? And I guess just the mindset behind that.
It's always been my mindset, wrongly or rightly. I think if you hire someone, it's our responsibility as leaders to hire the right person. And the right person has to be motivated. I think if you go down to that level where how many calls you're making, how many meetings you're making, there's some parameters around that, but you want the person to be driven, like to be able to be able to do that. I think when we get down to that level, you're already questioning yourself to say, shit, I'm probably the wrong person really in terms of doing the basics of our jobs. So we more support our staff to say, hey, these are roughly what you need to deliver. Obviously, there's budgets in terms of a yearly, quarterly, monthly type budget. We focus on placement numbers as well, because sometimes the fees coming through is not a direct responsibility of the consultant, because they might be through a PSA that they're high or low rate. So we kind of measure, because you might be filling 5 jobs, but they're lower margins, not set by you, compared to someone filling 1 job at a higher margin. We take all those into consideration. And I think going back to that is like we have those budgets, we have those regular coaching sessions with our staff to go, okay, what do you need to do? So obviously when you're building a kind of newer desk, it's a no-brainer. God, you've got to get out a bit more. All right. So, but then it goes the other way. When your desk is buoyant, if you're not filling the jobs, then what's the point of having those measurements to say, hey, you've got to go to X amount of client meetings every day? So it kind of moves pretty quickly. So we don't set those in concrete. And we're bloody terrible at our database. I'm not sure what other
recruiter
hosts.
isn't.
It's quite honest. I get sick of hearing it from our technology team. It's like, we can't get data because you don't enter shit into the database. And I talk to my team and they're like, we do the basics, and then you look at the end result, you go, hey, job came in, job filled on the same day. You're like, how'd you do that?
Just happens every week.
Earlier in the conversation, you mentioned that going back a few years ago, one of the kind of targets or goals you set yourself was to have a really engaged team. Where are you at with that now? I guess the reason I ask is, as Rec to Rex, right, we keep an eye on the market, who's going where, who's doing what, who's making moves. And it's very, very rare to see people leaving from talent and going to other agencies, right? Like I guess for us from the outside looking in, I would think that your staff turnover rate's like pretty low. So how are you going with it, and how do you keep people engaged?
It changes year on year, I must say. I mean, this year we're really focused on training and development for our staff, but a real focus on it. So we've been building our own training and development program, both for people coming through to the industry, right through to our future leaders, but not just your usual send them on a class, they come back. It's immersive session. So it's a 6-month program. At times they get flown around, say the leadership team, they'll be working with other MDs and flying to other states to work with them. So we really put a real importance in doing it right. Having said that, years ago, we did it wrong. We used to outsource it to some trainers and some video training. It was, to be honest, all rubbish. No one really took anything out of it. But I think this year really focused on that, whereas a couple of years ago, we weren't as focused on the training and development. So it changes year on year in terms of where we see staff require the right level of support for their engagement. We do a huge amount of stuff, I think, in terms of engagement, because recruitment, you guys know it as well as I do, people are your major assets. How do we look after them? And going to that point of making simple commission structures, ways they can really accelerate their earnings. And it's something we make a deliberate effort to do that, because that's probably why people aren't leaving. Apart from hopefully it's a great place to work, they see it as they're proud of the place they work because they get to, support their livelihood, whether that is, home life, kids, mortgages, and all that kind of stuff as well, right? I think the other aspect for us is we're very transparent in how we operate in terms of every month we have a huddle. We tell everyone our results, good, bad, indifferent. Everyone gets to know that we're going well or there's areas of improvement. Actually, a good example is probably COVID. We got, that's how our monthly huddle came into place, where we called the whole team. Whole world's going to end. No one knows what's going to happen, right? Shit. I still remember staff, when I talked to staff, they go, I was like, we're back in 2 weeks. They still pull me up on that. 2 years later in Victoria, we're not even back, right? But we made a deliberate effort to have a 5-step program to say to staff, your jobs are protected. First step, if we drop by X, and clear cut, if it does, well, first is executive would take a pay cut, and so on and so forth. So, out of that example, luckily we didn't even get to level 2, and the world became normal, and obviously we saw the brilliant days after COVID to recoup all the losses of that year or two, so to speak. So really transparent approach. And I think authentic leadership as well, and that resonates with our CEO, Mark Nielsen, who's a fantastic leader, and just being yourself in terms of treating people as people, regardless of role of the junior recruiter coming in right through to a director, so to speak. We're all just trying to do a good job and human, right? And just being normal about that as well and telling it how it is. Feedback's important as well in terms of good and bad. Also the fun component. Obviously, recruitment, you don't want to take yourself too seriously, guys. I mean, that's why I've been here for so long, because it is fun. Every day is different. We should, be honest, we try to celebrate everything's out there. Every day we're doing something with a team or we're celebrating something in terms of a win or even a placement. Even those small wins make a real difference to drive your culture around. It's a great place to work. You're in safe hands and you've got transparent leadership in terms of how we're going. We also quite vocal about our strategy. So all our staff know what our goals are next 1, 2, 3 years, so they know where the business is going. And create that security around that as well. And, with the current economic environment and AI taking over all jobs, I think there's a little bit of fear across the board. So that's why we're putting that training and development program across the organisation, is that we want to upskill you so that when AI doesn't it replace, we don't know, I don't know. But what we do know is AI can support your job and magnify what you do. So let's be in the forefront of that to support our staff and drive that. I think it really comes down to culture. We measure our engagement every year. So year on year, we get staff to fill out 100-question survey and it comes out with all these brilliant graphs. And I would say year on year, we've improved. We're in absolutely I think global standards, world-class standard. I can't remember what the Gallup survey is, but it's above the 85% in terms of our engagement survey, which is really good. But year on year, we keep working on it. We don't just sit on it and go, okay, we've done well last year. What do we need to do? And that comes from feedback from staff. So as I said, this year's about training development, because we heard that from staff. What else can we do better? So we started thinking, all right, let's put some investment, put some people around it, and put a real program that's real, rather than, as I said, outsourcing it, that people just go there and they come back. Did you learn anything? Yeah, great. But you really ask them, what'd you learn? And they're like,
they're thinking about their desk when they were,
Yeah, or they don't value it. It's just like, I just got told to do this training course, whereas now we're different. So our leadership training is like, it's not a competition, but we get people to apply for it, because that way we feel like staff actually want to do it. I think the old school, we used to go, hey, Simon, you go to this course, and in my background, fuck, last thing I want to do, right? Whereas now we're like, well, people want to do it, just a short description, even dot points. Why do you want to be involved in this program? Then we read it, evaluate, and go, yep, Lee, Chris, perfect, you're in.
Yeah. No, I like that.
No, it's different. And I imagine it's also probably comes down to the people you actually bring into your business, right? Because a lot of, recruiters, I think as you mentioned earlier, it's still a bit that sort of old school mentality, just, make calls, send emails, and you just focused on the doing. But those people who are obviously accepting of change, whether it's, tech coming in or just doing things differently, willing to give it a go. How much is that does that play in terms of when you're, putting experience aside and knowledge of recruitment, how much does that personality fit play a part when you're hiring?
Huge part. There's still some dinosaurs in the team that I must say, they do a great job, but it's hard to change how they operate. I think it's quite set. Having said that, I still challenge that for people to just try something. I think the team always is just have a crack. What's worst case, right? We celebrate failures. There's no failures. Just if you want to do something, you'll be supported. But I'd just rather people try something than not. In terms of hiring, it's funny, recruitment, and you guys are probably experts at it, right? It depends on the role. So I've kind of broken it down to where not one recruiter can do everything. We generally have kind of 3 levels. You got people who are great with candidates, and we call them sourcing specialists. So they feel 90% of our roles, really passionate about finding people, really passionate about filling jobs and getting people jobs. Then we've got the account manager guys that more run the large scale accounts. So they're probably more around service delivery, supporting the client, real genuine partnership. They get quite proud that they're, one of the best suppliers and they know their clients well. And then the next level is probably your client facing ones. They get a kick out of engagement events that I talked about earlier. They get a kick of scoring new clients. They don't mind picking up the phone to add value to a client, but it's actually a cold call. So we kind of stage it. So depending on the type of roles we're looking at, I look at those attributes and where they fit in. I think it's playing to people's strengths rather than when I started recruitment, it's like, you probably guys are the same. You get a desk, 360, away you go, get it done. They're like, shit, where do I start? The candidate, the client. And maybe why that's a lot of recruiters fail too initially is maybe not the right role alignment to their strengths.
Yeah.
Well, if you look at the role of, I think, the 360 recruiter, right? If you put it into, any other sort of sales role, right? Let's call it a, tech sales role. You're a BDR, whatever it is. Those businesses have their, sort of SDRs. They've got their customer acquisition teams. They've got, the people delivering
customer success
teams. So that 360, it's almost sort of 3 to 5 roles, right? Combined into one, and it's pretty hard to do it all.
And do it good,
right?
Yeah.
Like I agree with you 100%. There's people who are going to be better with clients or better with candidates or somewhere in between. Let me ask you this: do you think that 360 role will be non-existent in recruitment moving forward?
It depends on the structure of your agency. I think if I was building a new smaller agency, there might be a need for that, but it's very hard to find that individual that can do everything. I think that's more the problem. Like if you can get everyone that can do everything, fantastic, right? But I think as leaders, sometimes, I've reflected that you can't. Like you can be stubborn about it, but you're going to have a lot of failures in your hiring. So going back to it, using that strength of people and building teams. So similar to when you talk about high performance, I've got a lot of top pillars in that. Is each team, if I look at it, they have all unique skill sets. You got one person's really good with the customer. One person's one or two people really good with the account management and delivery, and then a couple of people are really good in terms of the filling of jobs and recruitment. We've got to work at pace. If you're trying to do everything, all right, come back to your desk, you're doing this, you're doing that. By the time you get to your desk and then you start to work in a role, if your structure is not right, your competitors already beaten you because 2 or 3 recruiters are already jumping on the job, clearing the market, and you're still obviously doing everything else as a 360 recruiter. So very, very difficult, I would say.
Good question for you. I was going to ask you what character traits or qualities top billers have, right? But I think in your business, it's not necessarily billers because everyone's roles are a little bit different. When you look at, let's call it high performers in your business, whether they're sourcing, account management, or more client facing, what are the common traits, skills that they have in your mind?
First one that comes to my mind is consistency. It's you want to run at a high level. I say to the team, you're running at 80, 90%, that's perfect. All right. If you're one of those that run at 100, I just see too many burnouts the first couple of months, you're absolutely killing it. And then that slows down. So the top performers I see the character, good consistency. They're proud of what they do as well. Okay. There's that bit of self worth that, hey, I'm bloody good at this. And I want to make sure that, for my customers' eyes, I am their top consultant or the ones that filling their jobs. There's a little bit of that competitiveness that needs to come in out of that person as well. I think being competitive in a nice way. I think we're very, one of our mottos is one team, there's a lot of sharing, but I think a good competitive spirit across the team is good to drive that extra level of performance. Career recruiters as well, I think there's a level of resilience that they need because you do see markets come up and down, and you might have a client that's been absolutely fantastic for a couple of years and they've gone the other way and you've got to rebuild, and that takes a lot of character to be able to rebuild that, and we're seeing a lot of people be able to do that, particularly the long-term recruiters. What else would I say? One of the funny ones over the years, I used to think money drives a lot, honestly. But when you see some of the top performers, don't get me wrong, they love their money. But it's a byproduct of doing a great job. They really want to serve the customer. And to be honest, all the top performers, they work bloody hard. I don't think it's just it's a one-trick wonder. They're generally there later at night. They're generally there every day. They're grinding it out. So there's so many characteristics, I must say. It's hard to pinpoint, just a couple. But I think if you build that profile of someone who loves what they do, proud of what they do, slightly competitive around the will to win and doing a great job for your customers and your candidates, generally those ones are the upper end in terms of their performance.
Yeah, got ya. In terms of, I guess, you leading a business, what I'm keen to know is, you've been in the industry for a long time. You've been with the same business for a long time. What is it that you do as a leader to continue to, I guess, grow and develop yourself?
Well, I think it's about evolving if you look at it, and it's strange. My career, two agencies. It's been 28 years actually. When I set foot, you never thought that's the case, right? I'm just like any other normal employee. Sometimes off 3 to 4 years, 5 or 6 years maybe, but I think I was quite lucky to, obviously the current company, Talent, and previously Amber, people have provided a great space. But I think evolvement requires yourself to be motivated to do that. And I look at it at different levels. So there's, all right, you can go to training to develop yourself, and that's great, fantastic, be it leadership, be it sales, be it strategy, be it business from a formal aspect, or you can look at board type roles where you're looking at governance and risk and looking at that level. Or there's developments where it's more in tune with the business. All right, how am I going to drive this business in terms of growth? I think for any business out there, particularly in this day and age, if you stay just not evolving, there's a problem both with the leader and the business as well. I think you just got to try different stuff out there in terms of what can add to your business. Recruitment, you can put it is complex, but a simple business, in terms of what we do. How do you evolve both yourself in terms of both an academic point of view and also as a business point of view? So if I look at it, yes, on the board courses or self-development courses, quite a lot of those. I think the next aspect where I get excited more is around business opportunities. Where do we add more to the team? And it's actually genuine. I think if I look at why I push myself to do these, if I don't push myself, team will probably not grow as quick. And the byproduct of that is there's less opportunities for our younger people coming up. So we hire a lot of juniors, and most of them stay with the business for a long time and actually grow into account management, account director type roles and become our top billers. So if we don't keep creating, there's a bottleneck up the top. We just keep staying the same. So we've got to try out new businesses, new service lines, and really creating that. So I look at it twofold, the academic, but also real life business growth.
Yeah.
And sometimes you'll get these wrong, I tried to start executive recruitment in terms of technology a couple of years ago, and that flopped. But as I said to them, well, we tried. Will we do it again? Possibility if we find the right person to lead that for us. I think there's still a market for it, but you got to just keep evolving.
Yeah, I like it. And for you, obviously running a pretty big business, I know you've got a young family. How do you manage your time? How do you find time to relax? How do you balance life?
Okay. I mean, you try not to work too long about hours, and I tell my team that. So, there's enough hours in 8 or 9 hours to do majority of your job. I think the hard bit is for leaders is to switch off. It's not the in-office stuff, and I'm trying better at it, but it is a struggle when you're at home, with family. You're thinking about another problem at work, or you're going to bed. These days you need a good night's sleep to recover, and it's good for your health. And I'm big on the health aspect as well. But somehow stuff just keeps coming up, and I don't want to say it, I dream about work more than anything. It's ridiculous. My team says, geez, can you stop thinking about us? Like, it was just the other day I was talking to one of the guys, I thought about you having a meal, having this fish. And he's like, what happened? And I was like, nothing. That was it. Nothing to do with work, but we were just two of us having a meal and a fish. And I was like, okay, cool. Let's check out what that star sign says, or, what that says. So I think it's, you got to balance life. So we're quite fortunate. We have a gym on site at work that the team can use. So I'm there 4 or 5 days a week. Good for the mind, but also a byproduct of that, it's good for actually building a culture within the team. So out of the 40 odd, probably about 12 or 15 go, but the banter they have in the morning just to get a bit of a workout, a bit of a chat before we start work, it's invaluable. And this wasn't a strategy that would help culture. It was just like, why not? It was not that expensive. We thought, let's get a gym membership, see what happens. But it's been real refreshing to do that. So I think you got to balance home life. It's like juggling. You can't drop any balls out there, but it's switching off though. I think it's the hard part. It's the hard bit. Like it's even holidays, I think it takes me a good week before I go, okay, everything's okay. Whereas the first week, oh shit, that problem, that person. But I think all leaders are probably similar.
I agree. I think that's one thing we've learned from just having obviously various guests on and leaders and high performers, but also us as well, running our own business as well. I think that's,
Have you heard any good tips from other leaders and how they switch off, or
No.
I think it's
impart some knowledge there?
I think it's just discipline is what I've heard. Like one thing that's, I know I used to do it, and this probably does Lee's head in a bit, but some weekends now, like what I try to do is just leave my phone remote, like don't even take it out anywhere. I'm spending time with my kids, just want to be focused on that moment, right? They're going to grow up soon. So I just want to spend some time with them and actually just physically giving yourself, I guess, permission, right? And space to say, hey, you know what? The world's not going to end because you didn't respond to that email or, you didn't do X, Y, or Z. It's going to be fine. And just having that mindset saying, cool, can wait. There's something that's right now that's much more important for me and for my own sort of sanity as well, right?
Doesn't do my head in, man. I'm actually envious that you're able to do it.
Yeah.
Because I really struggle with that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I always have I've got like that, sometimes a negative mindset of what could go wrong would go wrong, when reality is it's like most of the time, wait, that's something I've got to get better. But I'm definitely envious of you being able to switch off.
And I don't know, I think you got to lead by example. We tell our staff too, and we finish it not that early, but 5 o'clock. I tell my team, look, go home.
Yeah.
Spend some, get that extra half an hour, whatever it is, to spend with family and just switch off. But it's difficult. I see some of the high performers, they still 8, 9 o'clock, you see an email or something come through. It's like, well, we can deal with it tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's not that important.
No, I agree. Last couple of questions. So if you could go back in time and talk to Simon 20, 25 years ago, at the start of his recruitment career, what would you tell him? What bit of advice would you give him?
Treat it more seriously, because when you start off, you don't know if it's going to be a long-term career. But when it came to the point where, this works for me, probably could have stepped out a bit more of my comfort zone on that. I'm a very consistent person. Everything I do is very consistent. Eat, exercise, everything pretty much. It's very consistent. I think sometimes you can break out of the mold and challenge yourself a bit more and progress a bit quicker in life or in business, so to speak, and not be too afraid. I think maybe heritage or background, sometimes until you've done all this, don't push yourself out there. But if I look back, I push myself a bit more to just challenge myself. I wouldn't say progress, but that challenge.
Yeah, good. Well, you've had a really good career to date. So to look back and say you'd challenge yourself to push it out there again, I think says a lot about your character. And then final question, let's say you've got let's call it a tech recruiter, 2-3 years into their career. What would you tell them to focus on or think about now?
I would probably go on their goals first in terms of what they're trying to achieve in recruitment first, and then use that to work backwards. I think, if they want to progress in leadership in terms of a leadership role within an agency, is looking at, okay, how do I support staff? How do I develop staff? How do I build teams? How do I motivate type people out there and really taking that? Because there's a huge amount of roles in terms of recruitment leadership, right? I think if you want to be a really good biller and doing great in that aspect, is you need a blended desk. I think if I was running a desk these days, I'd be like, I want an organisation that supports me both on contract and perm, and the structure to really build a solid business for my employer and for myself in terms of the clientele I've got. So really driving that.
Yeah, perfect. Simon, thank you for coming on today, mate. I've really enjoyed this chat. It's been really insightful, and I think you've definitely given us some nuggets here for our audience. So once again, thank you for coming on, and wish you all the best for the rest of the year.
Thanks, Lee. Thanks, Chris. Been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
That's a wrap for this episode of The Special Sauce. We hope that you're walking away with some insights that you can actually use every day on your desk. If you enjoyed the conversation, follow, like, subscribe, or leave a review so we can reach more recruiters just like you. For more about Sorciety, check out our website on sorciety.com or follow us on LinkedIn. Thanks for listening, and see you next time on The Special Sauce.